All right, well, I'll tell you what, the ink hasn't been put to paper as of the time of this recording, but it has been reported by Adam Schefter that Kirk Cousins is expected to sign with the Minnesota Vikings on a 3-year deal reportedly worth $84 million, fully guaranteed. And you know what? This was the right move. I've been saying it this whole time. Shout out to Rick Spielman for making this happen. And you know what? As much as I do criticize Rick Spielman, I've been very fair that he is overall a very good GM. My whole thing is that he tends to just hold on to his bad picks for too long, and sometimes he can get overzealous trying to get cute at times. But when it comes to making good picks for the most part, and when it comes to trying to attack the quarterback position, he's been relentless at it. And I think, honestly, after the whole Christian Ponder saga, the dude has had a bad string of luck, quite honestly. He traded back in the first round to go after Teddy Bridgewater. He went down with that knee injury. We don't know if he's going to be the same. Teddy Bridgewater was my number 2 guy after Kirk Cousins, but compared to Kirk Cousins, there's just way too much risk there, especially with this window of opportunity that you have. And then Rick Spielman, when Teddy Bridgewater went down, he traded a first-round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles to go after Sam Bradford. And when Sam Bradford's healthy, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league as far as just throwing the football. And whether it's deep or accurate, short, intermediate, doesn't matter. Sam Bradford, when he's healthy, is one of the best quarterbacks in football. But unfortunately, he just can't stay healthy. We saw that in 2017. That week 1 game against the Saints, he was great. Tried to come back in that Chicago Bears game. Was it week 4 or 5, whatever it was? Lasted about not even a half of that NFL game. So, you know what? He's just had a bad string of luck. And he said, you know what? The hell with this. We're going to go after Kirk Cousins. And he did that. And according to Adam Schefter, Kirk Cousins is going to sign with the Minnesota Vikings. You needed an upgrade at quarterback. I'm just sorry. Compare, and I'm not gonna beat this dead horse anymore. Right? I've said all I've had to say about Case Keenum. But the fact is, when you compare Case Keenum to Kirk Cousins has a larger body of work. And compared to Case Keenum, who had 1 good year out of 6 seasons. And you know what? I've gone over the stats and everything like that, but just even the eye test alone, Kirk Cousins throws a much better deep pass. He's much more accurate. He puts much more zip on the ball compared to Case Keenum, where oftentimes every single game it seemed like just a lot of just floating passes up in the air with just a lot of air underneath of it for anybody to come down with it. And yes, you know, he completed a lot of passes and threw a bunch of yards, and that's all fantastic. But when you have the best duo in the league, receiving duo in the league, and one of them being an all-pro receiver in Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs will be an all-pro receiver at some point too. You know what? You just can't take that risk. And Pat Shurmur's gone. Would he be able to adapt to John DeFilippo? And I know John DeFilippo, his whole philosophy with the Eagles is, look, we're going to develop a plan around your abilities. I get that. But can Case Keenum repeat that again? There's too much risk there. We've seen that with Derek Anderson before, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Brian Hoyer. We've seen that time and time again. You just can't put that risk on this team with the window of opportunity that they have. So Kirk Cousins was the obvious choice. And then when you consider the fact that, look, everyone looks at $84 million, $28 million a year. That's ridiculous. Well, Sam Bradford just got a deal with the Arizona Cardinals for what, $20 million for this upcoming year, and he played 1 game last year. Everybody knew what the deal was with Sam Bradford, and they still gave him $20 million to play with the Arizona Cardinals. So, I mean, look, blame these owners. They give contracts to any damn quarterback out there, and you know what? Blame the Players Association, all right? Kirk Cousins should not take any heat for what he's done. He's represented himself much better than the Players Association could have ever dreamed of representing him or any other player for that matter. So good for Kirk Cousins. He's setting the bar high. He may change the game for other pending free agents, especially for quarterback. But look, when you consider the fact that Kirk Cousins was the best quarterback available, you plug him in with a better offensive line compared to 2016. And look, I know we still got holes on the offensive line. I'll talk about that in the next segment. But the offensive line isn't that bad, okay? You got your franchise center and Pat Elflein. You got Riley Reif. You got some Nick Easton. You tendered him with the second-round tender, so you got him for at least 1 more year. Look, and you're going to get better. You're going to take an offensive line with the 30 pick in the draft in the first round. So look, when you consider the fact that you add Kirk Cousins to this team with Dalvin Cook, with a better offensive line, with the Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph, look, you know what? Quite honestly, I look at a replacement for Kyle Rudolph, especially cheaper, because my thing is he can't break a tackle to save his life. Look, I get he can catch passes, he can run routes. I get that. It's all well and good. He's making, I don't have it in front of me, I believe he's making $7 million, somewhere around that nature. My thing is I just wish if you're talking about, hey, look, we need someone to break tackles and be explosive, look at the tight end, okay? That's my whole thing. So anyway, you add Kirk Cousins with this roster around him. We have two, and look, too many people, I may have said this before, but I'm going to say it again. I think too many people are too caught up in the fact that, well, Kirk Cousins, he's not Tom Brady and he's not Aaron Rodgers and he's not going to do anything. And they're looking at it as a blank slate as far as all 32 teams. Would you build your team around Kirk Cousins? Maybe, maybe not. That is a legitimate question that can be up for debate. But the Minnesota Vikings are not the same. They're not a blank slate compared to the other 31 teams. We have two examples of quarterbacks that have came into this system with the Minnesota Vikings. And in the case of Sam Bradford, when he's healthy and when he gets adequate offensive line protection, he's had his best career games with the Minnesota Vikings. And in the case of Case Keenum, when he came to the Minnesota Vikings, out of 6 years, he had his best season by far. He was a career journeyman and a backup until he came to the Vikings. So no one's saying that Kirk Cousins, oh, he's Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, but I'm sorry. When you have a guy who had his career best games, and when he's healthy, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but especially when you have a career journeyman who had his one good year out of nowhere, coincidentally with the best supporting cast in the entire NFL, how are we scoffing at a guy who's been top 10 in the league as far as production is concerned the last 3 years? I just don't get it. This was a necessary move, and I thank Rick Spielman for doing that. Now, here's something that I will say, though. Mike Zimmer, I'm going to bring this up here. Mike Zimmer, earlier at the Combine, and Judd Zulgad wrote about this, 1500 ESPN. Mike Zimmer, at the Combine, he was talking to the media, and when asked questions about the quarterback position and potentially Kirk Cousins and free agency and all this other stuff, Mike Zimmer did say this, quote, "The one thing I told Rick was, we've had a good team. That's why we've won 40 games. It's not because we've had this one guy or that one guy. Let's make sure we keep understanding the team is why we have done good things." So what I'm taking from that and what Judge Zolgad took from that as well is the interpretation. Look, we've had this collective group of roster. We have these collective group of players on this roster that have stepped in and did what they've had to do. Essentially the defense. Anthony Barr, I don't want to lose these guys, especially if Kirk Cousins, he's going to get all this money. How will we be able to retain the players that we have? And to that, I would say, look, like I said before, you're the head football coach. You need to pay to get a quarterback. But something that I would do if I'm Rick Spielman to settle the nerves of Mike Zimmer, because he may be a little bit ticked off, because at some point you're going to have to make a decision on Anthony Barr. I'm going to talk about what I would actually do with Anthony Barr in the next segment. I'll save that for the second one. But here's what I would say to Mike Zimmer if I was Rick Spielman. I'd bring him into the office and be like, look, sit down, Mike. Look, listen, congratulations, coach. We're giving you a raise. And he'd be like, what are you talking about? Look, listen, you have shown the ability to find and identify players that can fit in your system and or be able to get the best out of those players, specifically on the defense. I've said this again. Andrew Sendejo had the best season in his entire career this year under Mike Zimmer. Trey Waynes, he's developed very nicely. I know people like to clown on Trey Waynes a lot, but the dude can keep up with people. He's really good in coverage. He just doesn't know how to keep his hands to himself instead of just drawing flags all the time. But he had a pretty good year this year, okay? You've seen examples of players get the best out of them under Mike Zimmer. We believe that you can do that. I would take the combination of the philosophy of what the Dallas Cowboys are doing and the history of the New England Patriots. Now, based on the way this team is, I would say the Dallas Cowboys for the half of it because of, look, they've invested essentially all their money in the offense. Des Bryant, which, you know, he may get cut. He's not worth the money that he's worth. At the time, I understand why they signed him to that, but right now, he's just not worth the money that he's getting paid for. The offensive line, they've invested money in that. Look, I would say this. We've seen this team, this Minnesota Vikings team, without an offensive line. I don't want to ever go through that again. Offensive linemen are much more harder to find than I would say defensive linemen are. I'm just going to say that straight up because I think they're just more of a premier position. Then not only that, when you consider, look, when it comes to wide receivers, I've always said you can find them. They're a dime a dozen. You can find them anywhere. But this group of receivers that we have, Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, they are absolutely mandatory. You must absolutely keep those players beyond all costs. Look, Mike Evans just got, what, a $55 million contract? So you already can guess what Stephon Diggs is going to cost. I would say you're going to have to pay him just because you've seen Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen with three different quarterbacks with Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford, and Case Keenum, and they've all been able to produce no matter what. In a league where normally it's the quarterback that makes the receiver, these receivers can make the quarterback, and when you give them a much better quarterback, an upgraded quarterback, I think this with Kirk Cousins coming to this team, this offense has a chance to be just as impactful as the defense is. So I think, honestly, that combination with Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, the talent that they have, like I said, on that DeAndre Hopkins level where you can make the quarterback look a little bit better than what he actually is, I think there's value to that, and you're going to have to keep those guys. Like I said, you're going to have to keep investing in offensive linemen, supply and demand, and eventually, you know what? If Dalvin Cook, who I believe is on that trail to possibly to be the next Le'Veon Bell, you may have to pay him too, and obviously you're going to have to pay Kirk Cousins. Now, here's the thing that I'm going to say on that. On defense, on the defensive side of the ball, let's see, I've got three players who you absolutely must keep at all costs for the foreseeable future with Kirk Cousins as the franchise quarterback. And this is in no particular order. Number one, Harrison Smith. You've got him signed through 2021. Now, yes, he is getting a little bit up there in age. He's 29, I believe, right now. And you got him through 2021. So he'll be in his low 30s at the time. But you know what? He plays the safety position. We've seen safeties be able to thrive even when they get a little bit older. I think of Charles Woodson when he went from cornerback and he transitioned to safety. And then not only that, and look, before I even say this guy's name, I realize he's a POS. I realize that he's a complete whatever bleep, curse word, whatever it is you want to associate with him. I get it. But I'm just talking about on the football field, Darren Sharper. Darren Sharper was a quality safety through the age of 34 before he ultimately got done at 35 with the New Orleans Saints. That was in 2010. But in 34, when he reached age 34, that's when they reached the Super Bowl. And Darren Sharper played with the Minnesota Vikings. He was really, really good even in his 30s with us. So Harrison Smith, I like him. He's a dude that you absolutely must keep. Number two, Xavier Rhodes, a shutdown cornerback. You absolutely need him. That is one of those rare positions to find, a shutdown corner. You've got him signed through 2022. And lastly, I've got Eric Kendricks. I think his versatility as a as a linebacker to be able to stuff the run. He's actually a sneaky good pass rusher, I must say, which I didn't think that coming into last season, but he showed some flashes where if he has to rush the passer, he's actually pretty good at it, and his pass coverage abilities. Everson Griffin, look, he's getting up there in age. Maybe eventually he may get cut at some point a little bit down the road. But you know what? Like I said, defensive lineman under Mike Zimmer, I believe you can find that. Now, right now, Everson Griffin, he's cool. But I feel like defensive linemen, when they start to get in their 30s or somewhat, I know Julius Peppers, he's an anomaly, but I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about that. Linval Joseph, he's really good too, but he's starting to get up there in age. But like I said, on defense, Harrison Smith, Xavier Rhodes, and Eric Kendricks. Outside of that, I believe that Mike Zimmer has the ability to identify players, whether it's in the draft or free agency, whatever it is, to plug them into their system and get the best out of those players. So that way, when you're talking about players that are trying to go for their second contract, you may have to let them go. Like I said, this offense, typically speaking, when it comes to receivers, I'll be like, look, you can get them anywhere. You don't need to spend a lot of money on receivers. But those two receivers that we have, and Adam Thielen, he's getting paid cheap as well. He may wake up one day and be like, what the hell am I doing? I need to get paid what Stephon Diggs and Mike Evans are getting paid. So you know what? You're going to have to do that. You don't let them go. So that's what I would do. So, and then moving forward from that, I would give Mike Zimmer a raise, and comparing that to the Patriots side of the ball as well, because I talked about the Dallas Cowboys and how they invest most of their money into their offense. The New England Patriots, they have the philosophy of next man up. So that's that portion of, hey, you can identify players, Mike Zimmer. You've done that. You've shown that ability to do that and get the best out of players. We believe that you can do that. It's going to take a little bit more work. I get it. Constant reshuffling. But look what Bill Belichick and the Patriots did. Forget the fact that it's Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Look at the philosophy behind it. You look at what was the guy's name was it Gerard Mayo? Not Gerard Mayo. Who's the guy? Jamie Collins. Jamie Collins, right? I want a contract and I deserve all this money. and they traded him to the Browns. They ended up going to the Super Bowl. And that was what, last year, not 2017. I believe that was 2016. And they still went to the Super Bowl and beat the Atlanta Falcons. They still went to the Super Bowl this year. Their defense wasn't all that great. But besides this year, relatively speaking, their defense has been good. Bill Belichick has the ability to identify players where you're like, really? Oh, that's crazy. I had no idea. And they thrive under his system. I believe with the combination of Rick Spielman, who's able, Slick Rick as they call him, to be able to finagle some sort of move, whether it's trading up or trading back down to acquire more draft picks, and Mike Zimmer's ability to identify players and get the best out of them, I think that's why you need to take the philosophies of investing with this team, specifically this team. You need to invest your money in the offense, those 3 players on defense that I talked about. And for the rest of the players on defense, hey, next man up, just like the Patriots do. So anyway, moving forward, the next segment, we are going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? You know what we're going to talk about? We are going to talk about next offseason moves, free agency. Jerick McKinnon is going to the Niners. We'll talk about that next. Mediocre and Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy.